Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to installment number 4 of our series Spark Plugs. We now have a full 4-cylinder engine where the spark plugs coming up here. So,
Yay. Boo. That's a terrible joke.
yes, it's a joke about spark plugs. They're all going to be not great.
That's fair.
I had the pick of the terrible ones, and that wasn't bad. Anyway,
It was.
we
Continue.
have about give or take 10 minutes or so to discuss some of the topics or ideas that didn't quite make the cut into the full weekly podcast, but we did still want to bring to you one way or the other. So without further ado, I think I'm going to turn it over to Andrew here. What do we have for tonight?
I have for you tonight a duo of Nissan stories. The first one, really quick, the 2019 Nissan Altima. Altima is a car that we know, but we don't love. But here's something about the 2019. It's coming with all-wheel drive. It's coming with 250 horsepower and 273 foot-pounds of torque. It's coming
Check.
with all the fancy driver tech, but completely expandable. No auto manufacturer's done that. If they develop new technology, you'll be able to put it into this car. If you didn't buy it with the detection system and you want that, you can get it later. And they also have this really cool new variable compression engine where the cylinder run lengths are different depending on the power needs of the engine. That all sounds great.
Yeah, it checks every single box. So to be clear, the driver technology that's upgradable. So like you can just essentially go to your Nissan dealership and they just like plug it in and download, or is it manual install?
I think it's going to be a little bit of both, but
Okay.
The biggest headline there is that when Nissan upgrades their own technology, this car will be able to upgrade along with it, which is not something anyone offers currently.
I mean, that's even outside the automobile industry. I mean, that's one of the major complaints for the tech industry too. Is devices are disposable. After a year or two, you have to get a whole new one. You can't upgrade things anymore unless you're building your own computers.
Right.
So,
I mean, that's got to be a wave, right? Nissan has to have something, even if nothing else on this car works. That's got to be a wave. They just started something here, right?
I hope so, personally.
You would think, but I think on the corporate side of things, isn't that kind of a strategy, is to make things disposable, because then people have to come back and buy from you again?
There's a balance, and this is a discussion that I have in my work life all the time. Customers ask me, "Hey, why do I have to buy a new phone every couple of years?" Can't tell you, who I work for or anything else, but that's a discussion I have all the time, and I tell them, if we made something that specifically fell apart, think about how angry you are when you kind of feel like that's happening. What if it was absolutely happening? Would you ever buy another one from us again? Mm-hmm. And they look at me and they say, "Oh, well, no, not really." I say, "Well, then why would we?" And I think that, giving customers the option to, potentially continue to upgrade their cars with stuff that in the long run doesn't really cost you that much. I mean, I think a lot of people are not upgrading their cars because the collision detection system or the backup camera or the audio head unit is so much better in the one that's 2 years newer. I think they really start upgrading their cars when the engines are noticeably different, the transmissions are better, the interiors are nicer. And I think if you give people that little lure of like, hey, if you buy a car from us and next year we come out with a better, active cruise control, you can get that put in. Someone would buy that car that wouldn't otherwise do so.
I think
without
you're right.
costing the company very much, if anything, because you can sell those pieces at as much as it costs to make them.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I was providing a counterpoint just for the sake of conversation, but no, I agree with you guys. This is freaking awesome.
Yeah.
This is something that, I think we've mentioned it before on these, or I have on these podcasts, so at the risk of me sounding very broken record-ish, one of the reasons that I am a fan of Nissan is because they do these things that are outside of the box, and they're not afraid to be the first at something. Like they're not afraid to try and maybe not do so well, as opposed to letting someone else do it and fail.
Yeah.
And then coming out with it and be like, "Oh, look at us." And like, no, they're always going to be the ones on the forefront of these things. And that's kind of why, like, outside of, me growing up as a GM guy, like Nissan is kind of my go-to outside of the U.S.
Yeah, I think that's true of both all these driver aids and this variable compression engine. That's
The variable compression engine is
that's
so cool.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
I will post it in the video description when we put this one up. There's a very interesting article on how that all works, and it is, when you think about, we're going to literally, change the length and volume of these cylinders on the fly, you think that's got to be just stupid complicated, and it's not necessarily compared to things like turbocharging, direct injection, things like that. When this article that I have found breaks all that down, it's very surprising how simple all this is. It's kind of, a basic physics, basic mechanics. It's springs and really basic pieces of machinery that make this all go that no one's ever thought of before. And props to Nissan on that one.
Yeah, again, that could easily be something that becomes a new wave. Well, that was quick. We all love it, and I think we all hope nothing but the best things for it. Now, continuing with Nissan, they have joined Formula E.
Hooray!
Here's my question: will they stick with this longer than they stuck with the Delta Wing?
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't, cost wise.
But people also said that about the Delta Wings. It was this new, never before seen. We should probably explain that a little bit for those who might not know. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but the Delta Wing was a race car introduced into. Was it just IMSA, or was it also in?
There was one car. It was just IMSA originally, and again, why I'm a fan of Nissan is it was a private design. I want to say the designer's last name was Bowlby or Bowlesby, but correct me if I'm wrong, folks. He submitted that as a new IndyCar chassis.
Yep.
IndyCar rejected it, but Nissan, being at the forefront of things, saw an opportunity and said, "Hey, we could bring this." They
saw an even better opportunity because originally, remember who picked that up after IndyCar didn't? Panos.
No, Panos did after Nissan backed
After
out.
Nissan?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was first.
It was Nissan first.
Anyways, what we're talking about is a basically a triangular car. It wasn't a three-wheeler because it had two little tiny wheels at the front. But it kind of shaped like a triangle, two wheels at the back, two tiny wheels at the front. And Nissan raced it one?
I think it was 2 seasons.
Two seasons.
It was 2 seasons. Yeah. And basically, folks, if you want a physical description, it looks like a syringe.
Oh, that's really... Yeah, it looks like a syringe.
Yeah.
But what the idea was, and it was a tiny little engine. I think they actually measured the output in cc's, not even horsepower.
Yeah.
But the idea was what it's lacking in power output, it makes up in aerodynamic efficiency and fuel efficiency. And the speeds were relatively similar. And I think the concept wasn't terrible. It was just mechanical reliability that was kind of the gremlin of the thing.
It was laughable. I mean, let's really be honest about it here. It didn't work. And that's why Nissan jumped ship, I think.
Well, and you would always, both through Nissan and Panos, they would qualify actually pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But then they were afraid to push the car during the race because they were afraid it would break. So they would slowly fall back down through the standings
through
as
the
race
orders,
went on.
I think we only watched it finish once in the 2 years, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
But after the little junket into Delta Wing explanation, I think we got to circle back to Nissan and Formula E.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll stick around longer than they did with the Delta Wing because I think they saw that as an experiment, and the experiment didn't go too well for them, and they decided to, as you said, jump ship. Mm-hmm. I think Formula E is already relatively established, and you've got things like set chassis, set other pieces. I forget which one, Nick. Kind of which ones are spec in that series, but more or less. But the importance is that it's a designed series where every manufacturer is kind of dealing with the same thing, and it's seen as a way forward. It's seen as the future.
That's why they're going to stay longer, is because there's concrete evidence that electric technology in cars, whether it be hybrid or full electric, is advancing, and it's something that's going to keep growing. The Delta Wing, there was really, what road translation was there? I mean, not a lot.
Yeah, generally the high or low, aerodynamic drag coefficient, high energy tires, and small turbocharged displacements, but that's very generic.
Yeah. Very generic, where, I mean, it's just more solid, more concrete evidence that this electric technology is moving forward, and yeah, Nissan wants to be a part of that, just like a lot of the other manufacturers do. So I think they're going to stick with it.
I mean, let's hope so. I guess really the main blockage for me is that I still have a hard time taking Formula E seriously.
Yeah.
And I think that's because it's not entertaining racing to watch.
Yeah.
It's not much of a spectator sport yet, and it may never be because, as we mentioned in the racetrack episode, the sights and the sounds, or the sounds and the smells and all those types of things, you don't get that with an electric car.
Yeah, and it entirely, until we get to any potential designs on battery replacement, things like that, versus whole car replacement, endurance racing can't happen
Right.
with Formula E right now.
It's going to be sprints.
Yeah.
So you're in. I just read an article. They do their entire show in one day.
Yeah.
They do 2 practice sessions, a qualifying session, and a race, and they're out. There's no Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Which is part of their kind of appeal towards like more urban racing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they race in a city because it's quiet and
No emissions.
no fumes, and they're in and out in a day.
Yeah.
So
And they also don't bring a crowd, so you don't have to worry.
You have to worry about traffic.
And yeah,
That's. But I mean, I think you're both right. I think there are tangible benefits for Nissan for sticking with Formula E, and they also get to see what a lot of their main competitors are going to do or what they're learning from Formula E. So I think you're right.
yeah.
And as we've established, also Nissan's not afraid.
No.
They're just not as a company. They will try.
I'm gonna try
these
this.
things. Yep. Why not? Let's go for it. So kudos to Nissan.
All right, then that brings us to our just about 10-minute mark, give or take on like introductions and stuff like that. So I think we're gonna wrap this one up, guys. Any last comments?
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks, guys. All right.